When both engines failed after ingesting a flock of birds and the Airbus A320 began to lose altitude over New York, the next 4 minutes would test every system, every procedure, and the judgment of 2 pilots. On 15 January 2009, U.S. Airways Flight 1549, an Airbus A320-214 registered N106 US, departed LaGuardia Airport bound for Charlotte. On board, 155 people, 150 passengers, and 5 crew. Less than 3 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft suffered a dual-engine power loss. Captain Chesley Sullenberger and First Officer Jeffrey Skiles executed a forced water landing in the Hudson River, a controlled ditching in the middle of New York City. Remarkably, all 155 occupants survived. This was not just a dramatic rescue story, it became an operational touchstone for the entire aviation industry. This shocked the aviation industry because a modern, twin-engined, fly-by-wire transport, certified to operate safely with single-engine failures and robust against bird strikes within certification limits, had experienced simultaneous loss of both engines on climb-out in densely populated airspace. The event forced regulators, manufacturers, and airlines to re-examine bird strike risk, engine certification, training doctrine, and emergency response. Today, we'll unpack the sequence of events, the technical evidence, the decision calculus in the cockpit, and the wide-ranging industry consequences that followed. To understand why this event matters, we have to look at 3 areas: the airplane and its systems, the operational environment around LaGuardia, and the human factors governing split-second decisions. First, the airplane. The Airbus A320 family is a single-aisle, short to medium-range jet used worldwide. On this aircraft, 2 turbofan engines provide thrust for takeoff and climb. Modern engines and airframes are designed with multiple redundancies. Aircraft can continue safely on a single engine. Systems are monitored by avionics and health reporting systems like ACARS, and certification testing requires engines to tolerate ingestion of certain sizes and numbers of birds at defined conditions. Certification thresholds are intended to reduce the chance of catastrophic failure, but real-world encounters with large birds can exceed those test envelopes. Second, the environment. LaGuardia sits on a narrow peninsula with takeoff paths over water and then cityscape. That geography concentrates traffic into limited climb corridors and places any emergency decision into a congested, low-altitude operational context. Bird populations, particularly large birds like Canada geese, are common in coastal and wetland areas near airports, creating a persistent wildlife hazard. Third, the crew. Captain Chesley Sullenberger was a highly experienced flight crew safety expert and airline captain. First Officer Jeffrey Skiles was an experienced and capable first officer. Their training, experience, and crew resource management practices shaped the outcome. When multiple failures occur in seconds, CRM determines how tasks are parceled, decisions are made, and communication flows inside the cockpit and out to ATC and cabin crew. Here's how this works. When a bird is ingested into a turbofan engine, it can damage fan blades, bend or fracture vanes and compressor stages, and introduce debris that disrupts airflow. That can lead to compressor stalls, loss of thrust, surges, or fractured components that prevent the engine from producing rated power. On Flight 1549, the aircraft encountered a large flock of birds, later identified as Canada geese, at a critical phase of flight: low altitude, high thrust demand during climb. Both engines ingested birds, and both subsequently lost significant thrust. The National Transportation Safety Board investigation found extensive engine damage consistent with large bird ingestion. Importantly, engine certification involves ingesting birds of sizes chosen to represent a reasonable hazard, but real bird masses vary, and multi-bird ingestion or ingestion of very large birds can exceed the test conditions. That technical gap in the real world versus test conditions is one reason the industry studies wildlife hazards continuously. With both engines losing thrust, the aircraft immediately began to descend. The pilots had a few options, each with trade-offs in distance, turn radius, and altitude. Attempt to return to LaGuardia, divert to a nearby field such as Teterboro, or execute a forced landing on water. Those options are evaluated against the airplane's energy state, altitude, airspeed, and remaining thrust, and the time available. Here's how this works in plain terms. At low altitude, a turn back to the airport requires a large energy margin. You need altitude to trade for the time and bank necessary to line up on final. Simulations and later analyses compared the aircraft's reachable field options and concluded that returning to LaGuardia was marginal and time-consuming. Attempting the turn could have consumed altitude, and the airplane risked stalling close to or over urban terrain. The Hudson offered a relatively flat, obstruction-free stretch where controlled ditching could be attempted. Captain Sullenberger judged that a water landing would maximize survivability given the dwindling altitude and uncertain engine restart prospects. The cockpit is where procedure meets crisis. After the multiple engine anomalies, the crew ran quick, time-critical checks, attempting engine relights and consulting memory items for engine failure. Meanwhile, the other pilot coordinated with ATC and planned the landing. This division of labor, one pilot flying, the other handling checklists and communications, is the core of CRM. It allowed Captain Sullenberger to focus on flying a precise glide and approach to the river, while First Officer Skittles ran the engine restart procedures and talked to controllers. Cabin crew prepared passengers for impact, instructing brace positions and readying for evacuation. What separates an accident from a survivable emergency is not just the technical checklist items, but the human interplay. Clear roles, concise communication, and an experienced command presence. The NTSB formally commended the crew's decision-making and CRM in its final report. Ditching an airliner is rare and more complex than a runway landing. Water surface tension, wave slope, touchdown attitude, and evacuation logistics all create hazards. The A320 structure allowed a survivable water touchdown when flown with proper pitch and speed control. After touchdown, the crew initiated evacuation. Slides doubled as rafts, doors were used where practical, and passengers evacuated onto the wings and into life rafts. Critically, the evacuation window was limited by cold water temperature and hypothermia risk. New York's maritime environment became the rescue stage. Ferries, tugboats, NYPD, FDNY, and Port Authority vessels converged quickly. Passengers were taken from life rafts and wings to safety within minutes. The combination of a controlled ditching, rapid crew and evacuation execution, and immediate external rescue assets produced an outcome with no fatalities, an extraordinary result in a high-stress water landing. U.S. Airways 1549 produced measurable and lasting industry impacts in three major areas: wildlife hazard management, pilot training and CRM emphasis, and certification and testing for engines. First, wildlife hazard management. Airports and regulators intensified investments in wildlife reduction programs, habitat management, and detection tools. Avian radar systems, improved perimeter habitat control, and coordinated animal control programs at airports were prioritized. The FAA and other agencies increased research into mitigation strategies. Operators adjusted risk assessments for routes and airport operations near wetlands and migratory flyways. Second, training and CRM. Airlines worldwide reviewed their syllabi to include more multi-system failure scenarios and water ditching drills. CRM, the practices that assign roles, manage workload, and support decisive leadership, was reinforced as a critical determinant of survivability. Simulation training that emphasizes communication, task distribution, and rapid decision cycles became more prominent in recurrent training. Third, design, certification, and testing. The industry investigated how real-world bird strikes exceeded certain test envelopes and what that meant for engine resilience. Manufacturers and regulators examined ingestion testing protocols and, over time, adjusted guidance and research priorities to better reflect risks posed by larger birds and multi-ingestion scenarios. Financially, operational disruptions included an aircraft hull loss, N106 was declared a total loss, and direct costs associated with rescue, medical claims, and replacement capacity. The more pervasive financial effect, however, was in training investment and infrastructure spending, wildlife control, radar systems, simulation hours, which represent ongoing operating expenses that all carriers must account for, so airlines will include wildlife hazard mitigation and expanded emergency scenario training as routine line items in their safety budgets going forward. What this could mean for the future is straightforward and evidence-based. First, airport wildlife management will continue to receive investment, from better land use planning around airports to avian radar systems that give operations real-time situational awareness. Expect measurable reductions in catastrophic strikes where these systems are in place. Second, manufacturers and regulators will keep tightening certification and testing standards where the data justify changes. That means incremental improvements in engine ingestion tolerance tests and materials science. Incremental, data-driven changes rather than sweeping redesigns. Third, CRM and simulation training will remain central. Expect more recurrent scenarios built around multiple concurrent failures and more frequent water evacuation practice in simulators and training syllabi. That operational emphasis reduces the probability of similar outcomes escalating into fatalities. All of these shifts are conservative, evidence-based responses. They lower the probability of repeat events and improve survivability if they do occur. U.S. Airways 1549 is a case study where systems, training, judgment, and rapid rescue combine to save 155 lives. We saw how bird strike mechanics can overwhelm even modern engines, how limited altitude compresses decision windows, and how disciplined CRM and skilled airmanship can turn a catastrophe into a survivable emergency. We also saw the industry respond, improved wildlife mitigation, refined training doctrines, and closer inspection of certification test envelopes. We avoid speculation in this episode. Our conclusions are grounded in the NTSB investigation, operator records, and industry data. Where public evidence is limited, we state that clearly. If you want a deep technical follow-up, a scene-by-scene cockpit reconstruction of the final 4 minutes, a simulator replay of the geometry and energy state, or a technical explainer on engine ingestion mechanics and certification standards, drop a comment and I'll produce a dedicated technical deep dive. Remember to subscribe for more aviation content. If you enjoyed this detailed analysis, hit like, share it with a colleague in operations or training, and ring the bell so you don't miss the follow-up deep dive.